I sat across from a 17-year-old kid, terrified of disappointing his parents, telling him to be authentic, to choose himself, when it suddenly hit me that I'd spent 15 years living someone else's life and had no idea how to get out. That moment did not come out of nowhere. It started ordinary like every session before it. I tell Marcus that it's okay to feel lost. That's what I say, sitting across from him in my office while he stares at the floor, his hands gripping the arms of the chair like he's afraid he'll float away if he lets go. I tell him that choosing a path because it feels right to him, not because it's what everyone expects, is the hardest and most important thing he'll ever do. I tell him that authenticity is not easy, but it's the only way to build a life he would not spend years trying to escape from. He nods. He thanks me. He leaves. And I sit there, alone in the silence of my office, with the afternoon light slanting through the blinds, and I feel something I do not have a name for. It's not doubt, exactly. It's more like a crack in a wall I did not know was there. I've given that advice 1,000 times. I believe it, or I thought I did. But as I watch Marcus walk down the hallway toward his next class, his shoulders a little straighter than when he came in, I realize I do not know if I've ever followed it myself. I shake it off. It's been a long week. That's all this is. Fatigue, maybe. The kind that settles in after too many sessions with too many kids carrying too much weight. I close my notes, file them in the cabinet, and check the time. 3:40. I have another appointment at 4, then a staff meeting at 5. There's no space in the day to sit with this feeling, whatever it is, so I do not. Before Emily comes in. She is a junior, smart, anxious, the kind of student who overthinks every decision until she is paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong one. We've been working together for months, and she has made progress, but today she looks tired. How are you? Ask. She shrugs. Okay, I guess. I wait. She'll talk when she is ready. That's one of the first things you learn in this job. Silence is a tool, not an absence. I got into the summer program, she says finally. The one at Cornell. That's great. Congratulations. She does not smile. Yeah, my parents are really happy. And you? She looks at me, and there is something in her eyes I recognize but see not quite place. I do not know if I want to go. Why not? Because it's not what I want to do. That's what they want. And I keep telling myself that if I just do this one thing, this one summer, then maybe after that I can do what I actually care about. But I do not know if that is true. I think maybe I'm just lying to myself. I lean back in my chair, folding my hands. This is familiar territory. I know what to say. What do you actually care about? She hesitates. Writing. Not academic writing. Like stories. Fiction. And your parents do not support that? They think it is a hobby, not a career. I nod. So you re-caught between what feels right to you and what feels safe to them. Yeah. What do you think you should do? She looks at me like she is hoping I'll give her a different answer than the one she already knows. I think I should go, because disappointing them feels worse than disappointing myself. I open my mouth to respond, to tell her that living for someone else's approval is a trap, that she has to choose herself, that regret is heavier than fear. But the words do not come. Instead, I hear my own voice saying things I do not remember deciding to say, advice that sounds hollow even as I'm giving it, and when the session ends and Emily leaves, I realize I've been on autopilot the entire time. The staff meeting is worse. We re-discussing a new initiative on student mental health, and the principal wants me to lead it. It's a big responsibility, a recognition of my work, and everyone at the table is nodding and saying it's the right choice. I should feel proud. I should feel something, but all I feel is tired. I drive home in silence, the radio off, the windows up. My wife, Karen, is in the kitchen when I walk in. She is chopping vegetables for dinner, and the sound of the knife on the cutting board is rhythmic, almost meditative. How was your day? She asks without looking up. Fine. Just fine. Yeah. She glances at me, and I see her deciding not to push. We've been married 22 years. She knows when I do not want to talk. I kiss her on the cheek, tell her I'm going to change, and go upstairs. In the bedroom, I sit on the edge of the bed and stare at the wall. The feeling from earlier is still there, that crack, and now it's wider. I do not know why Marcus's session bothered me. I do not know why Emily's question felt like it was aimed at me. I do not know why I feel like I'm standing on the outside of my own life, watching someone who looks like me go through the motions. My phone buzzes. A text from my daughter, Sophie. She lives in the city now, works in marketing, has her own life. The message is short. Coffee this week? I type back, sure. Let me know when. She responds immediately. Thursday. Their essay place near my office. Sounds good. I set the phone down and realize I'm relieved she suggested it. Not because I miss her, though I do, but because I do not have to be the one to reach out. I do not have to risk her saying she is too busy. I do not have to confront the fact that we talk less now than we did when she was in high school, and that most of the time I do not know what to say to her. Karen calls me down for dinner. We eat at the table, the two of us, and she talks about her day at the library, about a new exhibit they replanning, about a coworker who is retiring. I listen, or at least I pretend to, and I nod in the right places and I ask the occasional question, and it all feels like a script we've been performing for so long that neither of us remembers when it stopped being real. After dinner, I go to my study. It is a small room at the back of the house, lined with books I have not read in years and diplomas I have not looked at in longer. I sit at my desk and open my laptop, thinking I'll catch up on notes, but instead I find myself scrolling through old photos on the cloud. Sophie as a kid, Karen and me on vacation, younger, smiling, and then, further back, photos from college. Me and a group of friends, sitting on the steps of a building I barely remember. Me at a protest holding a sign. Me in a cramped apartment, surrounded by notebooks and coffee cups, looking like someone who believed in something. I do not recognize that person. I close the laptop and lean back in my chair. The house is quiet. Karen is watching something in the living room, the faint sound of a television drifting through the walls. Outside, a car drives by, its headlights sweeping across the window. I think about Marcus, about Emily, about the advice I gave them, and I realize I do not know if I believe it anymore. Not because it's wrong, but because I've never tested it. I've never had to. I chose safety. I chose stability. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that was the same thing as choosing myself. The next morning, I wake up before the alarm. Karen is still asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even. I get dressed quietly and go downstairs, making coffee in the dark. The house feels different at this hour, emptier, like it's waiting for the day to fill it with sound and movement. I drink my coffee standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard. The grass needs mowing. The fence needs painting. These are the kinds of things I think about now. Maintenance. Small tasks that keep everything looking the way it is supposed to. At school, I go through the motions. Morning meetings. Emails. A session with a freshman who is struggling with anxiety. Another with a senior who is terrified of leaving for college. I say the right things. I take notes. I schedule follow-ups. But the whole time I feel like I'm watching myself from a distance, and the person I'm watching does not seem real. At lunch, I sit in my office and eat a sandwich I do not taste. My phone buzzes. A reminder about the coffee with Sophie on Thursday. I stare at it for a moment, then put the phone away. That afternoon I have a group session. 6 students, all dealing with different issues, but the theme today is fear. Fear of failure. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of making the wrong choice. We go around the circle and each of them shares something and I listen and I ask questions and I guide the conversation the way I've done 100 times before. Then one of them, a girl named Rachel, says something that stops me. I think the worst thing, she says, is not failing. It's living a life that looks successful but feels empty. Like, what if you do everything right and you get to the end and you realize you were just going through the motions the whole time? The room is silent. The other students are looking at her, nodding, and I'm supposed to say something, but I do not know what, because she is right, and because I think she might be describing me. I manage to steer the conversation somewhere else, but after the session ends and the students file out, I sit there alone, staring at the empty chairs. Rachel's words are still ringing in my ears. Going through the motions. That's what this is. That's what I've been doing. And I do not know how long it has been happening, or when it started, or how to stop. That night, I lie awake beside Karen, staring at the ceiling. She is asleep, her hand resting on my chest, and I think about all the years we've been together, all the conversations we've had, and I realize I not remember the last time I told her something true. Not a fact, not an update, but something real. Something that mattered. And I do not know if that's because I've been hiding, or because there's nothing left to tell. Etap 7 Generacja Dovgastor Glava 2 Thursday comes faster than I expect. I meet Sophie at a coffee shop in the city, a place with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling. She is already there when I arrive, sitting at a small table near the window, scrolling through her phone. When she sees me, she smiles and stands to hug me. It is brief, polite, the kind of hug you give someone you care about, but do not know how to be close to anymore. Hey Dad. Hey Soph. We sit, and she asks if I want anything. I tell her I'm fine, but she insists, so I order a coffee I do not need. We make small talk while we wait for it to arrive. Her job is going well. She is working on a new campaign. She is thinking about getting a dog. I nod and ask questions and try to sound interested, but the whole time I'm aware of the distance between us. The gap that has grown so wide I do not know how to cross it. The coffee arrives, and there is a lull in the conversation. Sophie stirs her latte, not looking at me. So, she says finally, Mom mentioned you've been kinda quiet lately. Tess worried. I feel a flash of irritation. Not at Sophie, but at the fact that Karen talked to her about me. I'm fine. Sophie looks up, and there is something in her expression I see not read. Are you? Yes. She does not push, but I can see she does not believe me. She takes a sip of her coffee, then sets the cup down carefully. I was thinking the other day about when I was in high school. Do you remember when I wanted to switch majors in college? I was going to do pre-med, and then I told you I wanted to do communications instead? I remember. She was a sophomore, and she called me in a panic, convinced she was making a huge mistake. I talked her through it, told her it was her life, her decision. Yeah, I remember. You told me it was okay to change my mind, that it was better to figure it out then than to spend years doing something I did not care about. She pauses. I think about that a lot, 'cause I wonder if you ever did that, if you ever changed your mind about something big. The question catches me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you've been a school psychologist for as long as I can remember, and you good at it. But I do not know if it's what you actually wanted to do, or if it's just what you ended up doing. I do not know how to answer that, because she is right and because I've never said it out loud. Why are you asking? She shrugs, looking out the window. I do not know. I guess I've been thinking about my own life, about whether I'm doing what I want or just what makes sense. And I realized I do not really know much about yours. Like, before you were my dad, before you were a psychologist, I do not know who you were. I want to tell her that I do not know either, that the person I was before feels like someone I made up. But instead, I say, I wanted to be a writer. Sophia's eyes widen slightly. Really? Yeah. Fiction, mostly. I had this idea that I'd write novels, travel, live in some cheap apartment and spend my days working on manuscripts. I laugh, but it sounds hollow. Obviously, that did not happen. Why not? Because it was not practical. Because I had bills to pay. Because I met your mom and we got married and I needed something stable. I pause. And because I was not sure I was good enough. Sophie is quiet for a moment. Then she says, do you ever think about it? About what it would been like if you tried? I do not answer, because the truth is, I've spent years not thinking about it. And now that I am, it feels like opening a door I should left closed. We finish our coffee and say goodbye. Sophie hugs me again, a little longer this time, and tells me to take care of myself. I tell her I will, even though I'm not sure what that means anymore. On the drive home, I think about what she said, about who I was before, And I realize I've been so focused on being the person everyone needed me to be, husband, father, psychologist, that I never stopped to ask if that person was me. That weekend, Karen suggests we go through the garage. It has been on her list for months, and she has finally decided to tackle it. I agree, mostly because I do not have a reason not to. We spend Saturday mornings sorting through boxes, most of them filled with things we should have thrown out years ago. Old clothes, broken appliances, Sophia's childhood toys. And then I find a box I do not remember packing. It's in the back corner, covered in dust, and when I open it, I see notebooks. Dozens of them, filled with my handwriting. Stories I started and never finished. Ideas I had and abandoned. Pages and pages of words that used to mean something. Karen comes over and looks at the box. What's that? Old stuff. From college. She picks up one of the notebooks and flips through it. You wrote a lot. Yeah. Why do you stop? I take the notebook from her, closing it gently. I do not know. Life, I guess. She looks at me for a moment, and I can see she wants to say something, but she does not. Instead, she goes back to sorting through another box, and I'm left holding the notebook, staring at the words I wrote 25 years ago. That night, I see not sleep. I lie in bed, listening to Karen breathe beside me, and I think about the notebooks, about the person who wrote them, about the life I thought I'd have. And I realize that somewhere along the way, I stopped being that person and started being someone else. Someone safer, someone smaller. At work the following week, I go through the motions. Sessions, meetings, emails. But the crack I felt after Marcus's session is wider now, and it's harder to ignore. Every time a student talks about their fears, their doubts, their struggles to figure out who they are, I hear my own voice echoing back at me. And I do not know if I'm helping them or just projecting my own failures onto their lives. On Wednesday, I have a session with a senior named Tyler. He has been coming to see me for a few weeks, dealing with pressure from his parents to go to medical school when he wants to study music. It's a familiar story, and I've been guiding him through it the way I always do. But today, when he asks me what I think he should do, I hesitate. What do you want me to say? Ask. He looks confused. I do not know. I guess I want you to tell me it's okay to disappoint them. Is it? Is not that what you supposed to say? I lean back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. I do not know, Tyler. I do not know if it's okay. I do not know if it's worth it. I do not know if you regret it or if they ever forgive you. I do not have the answers. Tyler stares at me, clearly thrown off. But you supposed to help me figure it out. I know, and I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've given that same advice to hundreds of students. Follow your passion. Be true to yourself. Do not live for someone else's approval. But I do not know if I believe it anymore. The words hang in the air between us. Tyler does not say anything, and neither do I. After a long silence, he stands up, grabs his bag, and leaves without another word. I sit there alone, staring at the empty chair, and I realize I've just crossed a line. I've let my own crisis bleed into his, and I do not know how to take it back. That evening, I sit in my study with one of the old notebooks open in front of me. I read through the pages, stories I barely remember writing, and I feel a strange mix of nostalgia and grief. This person, the one who wrote these words, believed in something. He thought he had something to say. And I do not know when I stopped believing that. I do not know when I decided it was easier to help other people find their voices than to use my own. Karen knocks on the door and comes in. She sits on the edge of the desk, looking at the notebook. You've been spending a lot of time in here, she says. Yeah. Are you okay? I close the notebook. I do not know. She waits, and I know she is hoping I'll say more, but I do not know how to explain what's happening. How do I tell her that I feel like I've been lying to myself for years? That I do not know who I am anymore? That every day I go to work and give advice I'm not sure I believe, and come home to a life that feels more like a performance than a reality? I think I made a mistake. I say finally. With what? With everything. With this. I gesture vaguely at the room, at the house, at the life we've built. I do not know if this is who I'm supposed to be. Karen's face shifts, and I see something in her expression I have not seen in years. Hurt. What are you saying? I'm not saying I do not love you. I do. But I think I've been going through the motions for a long time, and I do not know how to stop. She is quiet for a moment, and then she stands up. I see not fix this for you, Michael. I do not even know what this is. But if you looking for permission to blow up your life, you not gonna get it from me. She leaves, and I sit there alone, the notebook still open in front of me, and I realize that I've just said something true for the first time in years. And it did not make anything better. It just made everything more complicated. The next few days feel like walking through fog. Karen and I do not talk about what I said. We move around each other carefully, speaking only when necessary, and the silence between us is heavier than any argument we've ever had. I know I've hurt her, but I do not know how to take it back without lying, and I'm tired of lying. At work, I avoid Tyler. I see him in the hallway once, and he looks at me like he's waiting for me to say something, to apologize or explain, but I just nod and keep walking. I know I should talk to him, should tell him I was having a bad day, that I did not mean what I said. But the truth is, I did mean it, and that's what scares me. On Friday, I get an email from the principal asking me to stop by her office. My stomach tightens. I know what this is about. Tyler must have said something, or maybe someone else noticed I've been off. Either way, I'm about to have a conversation I'm not ready for. Principal Hayes is sitting behind her desk when I walk in, her hands folded in front of her. She gestures for me to sit. Michael, she says, her tone careful. I wanted to check in with you. I've heard some concerns. From who? A student mentioned that a recent session did not go the way they expected. They said you seemed uncertain. I know she's talking about Tyler. I had a rough day. I should not have let it affect the session. That's all it was? A rough day? I want to say yes. I want to tell her it would not happen again, that everything is fine, that I'm fine. But sitting here, looking at her expectant face, I realize I say not. No. S more than that. She leans back in her chair, waiting. I think I'm burnt out. I say, and even as I say it, I know it's not the whole truth. Burnout implies exhaustion from doing too much. What I feel is exhaustion from doing something I'm not sure I should have been doing in the first place. Have you thought about taking some time off? Maybe. I do not know. She studies me for a moment. Michael, you've been here a long time. You're one of the best at what you do. But if you need a break, no one is going to judge you for it. I nod, but I do not say anything, because I know that taking time off will not solve this. This is not about needing rest. It's about needing to figure out who I am when I'm not sitting in this office, giving advice to kids who think I have answers. That evening, I get a text from an old friend, Brian. We went to college together, roomed together for 2 years, and then drifted apart the way people do when life takes them in different directions. I have not heard from him in at least 5 years, and seeing his name on my phone feels like a message from another life. The text is short. Hey man, I'm in town for work. Want to grab a drink? I stare at the message for a long time before I reply. Sure. When? Tonight? Their SA place near the Marriott on 5th. I tell Karen I'm meeting an old friend, and she just nods, not asking any questions. I drive to the bar, a dimly lit place with wood paneling and too many TVs, and find Brian already there, sitting at a corner table with a beer in front of him. He looks older, his hair graying at the temples, but he is still the same Brian I remember. Easy smile, casual confidence. We shake hands, and he gestures for me to sit. It's been a while. Yeah, too long. We order drinks and spend the first 20 minutes catching up. He tells me about his job, consulting work that takes him all over the country. He is divorced, no kids, living in a condo in Denver. He asks about me and I give him the highlights. Married, 1 daughter, school psychologist, stable life. Sounds like you've got it figured out, he says. I laugh, but it comes out bitter. Does it? He tilts his head, studying me. What's going on, man? You seem off. I take a long drink, buying time. Do you ever think about college? About the stuff we used to talk about? The plans we had? Sometimes. Why? I do not know. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, about who I was back then. And I do not recognize that person anymore. Brian leans back in his chair. You mean the guy who wanted to write the great American novel and live in a van? Yeah, that guy. You not him anymore. So what? So I do not know who I am instead. Brian takes a sip of his beer, considering. You a husband, a father, a psychologist. That's who you are. But what if that's not who I was supposed to be? He looks at me for a long moment, and then he says, Mike, I'm going to tell you something, and you not going to like it. You having a midlife crisis. That's all this is. You 45, you looking back at your life, and you wondering if you made the right choices. Everyone does it. But the answer is not to blow everything up. The answer is to accept that you made the choices you made, and they brought you here, and here is not so bad. What if here feels like nowhere? Then you make it somewhere. You do not start over. You see not. You not 20 anymore. I do not say anything. Because he's right and because he's wrong, and I do not know how to explain the difference. We finish our drinks and say goodbye. Brian tells me to stay in touch, and I say I will, but we both know I will not. On the drive home, I think about what he said. About acceptance. About making peace with the choices I've made. And I realize that's exactly what I've been doing for years. I've been telling myself that this is enough, that wanting more is selfish, that the life I have is the life I should be grateful for. But I'm not grateful. I'm empty. When I get home, Karen is already in bed. I stand in the doorway watching her sleep, and I think about all the years we've spent together. The good ones and the hard ones. The moments of closeness and the long stretches of distance. And I wonder if she feels the same way I do. If she's been going through the motions too. Or if I'm the only one who's lost. The next morning, I wake up early and go for a walk. The neighborhood is quiet. The streets empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers. I walk without a destination, just moving, and eventually I find myself at a park I have not been to in years. There's a bench near a pond, and I sit down watching the water. A woman sits down on the bench next to me. She's maybe 60, gray-haired, wearing a windbreaker and running shoes. She does not say anything at first, just sits there, catching her breath. After a few minutes, she looks over at me. You look like you carrying the world on your shoulders. I glance at her, surprised. Something like that. Want to talk about it? I do not know why, but I do. Maybe it's because she's a stranger. Maybe it's because I'm tired of keeping it inside. I think I've been lying to myself for a long time. She nods like this is the most normal thing in the world. About what? About who I am. About what I want. About whether the life I'm living is the one I actually chose, or just the one I ended up with. She is quiet for a moment, watching the pond. Then she says, I was married for 30 years, had 3 kids, worked as a nurse. And one day, I woke up and realized I did not know who I was anymore. I spent so long being a wife, a mother, a caregiver, that I forgotten there was supposed to be a person underneath all that. What did you do? I left. Divorced my husband, quit my job, moved across the country, started over. Did it help? She smiles, but it's sad. Yes and no. I found out who I was. But I also lost a lot. My kids did not understand. My ex-husband never forgave me. And there are days when I wonder if it was worth it. Do you regret it? No. But I do not regret it either. It's more complicated than that. She stands up, stretching. Whatever you going through, just know there's no right answer. You can stay or you can go. You can keep pretending or you can stop. But either way, you going to lose something. The question is what you can live without. She walks away, leaving me alone on the bench. And I sit there for a long time, thinking about what she said. About loss. About choice. About what I can live without. When I get home, Karen is in the kitchen, making coffee. She looks up when I walk in, and there's something in her face I have not seen in a while. Not anger, not hurt, just weariness. "We need to talk," she says. I nod. "I know." We sit at the table, and for the first time in years we have a real conversation. Not about bills or schedules or what's for dinner. About us. About the distance between us. About whether we still the people we were when we got married, or if we've become strangers who happen to share a house. Karen tells me she's felt it too. The emptiness. The sense that we just going through the motions. And she admits that she does not know how to fix it, or if it can be fixed. "I do not want to lose you," she says. "But I also do not want to keep living like this. Like we roommates instead of partners." I do not either. So what do we do? I do not have an answer. And for the first time, I do not pretend to. The following week, I take a leave of absence from work. Principal Hayes does not ask many questions, just tells me to take the time I need. I know there will be consequences, sessions that get reassigned, students who feel abandoned, colleagues who wonder what happened. But I see not keep showing up and pretending I have answers when I do not even know the questions anymore. Karen and I do not make any big decisions. We do not separate. We do not go to therapy. We just exist in the same space, trying to figure out if there's anything left between us worth saving. Some days we talk. Other days we do not. And slowly, I start to realize that maybe this is what honesty looks like. Not a grand revelation, but a quiet acknowledgement that we do not know what comes next. I spend most of my time in my study, going through the old notebooks. I do not write anything new. I just read. Stories I started and never finished. Ideas that felt urgent at the time and now seem naive. And I try to remember what it felt like to believe in something enough to put it on the page. One afternoon, Sophie calls. She asks how I'm doing, and for the first time I tell her the truth. "I'm not okay," I say. "I do not know what I'm doing with my life, and I do not know how to fix it." She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "You do not have to fix it, Dad. Maybe you just have to live with it." I do not know how to do that. Neither do I. But I think that's the point. Nobody does. We talk for a while longer, and when we hang up, I feel a little less alone. Not because she gave me answers, but because she did not try to. A few days later, I get a call from Tyler's mother. She is upset, says Tyler told her about our last session, about how I admitted I did not have the answers. She wants to know what kind of counselor I am, what kind of person says that to a kid who is looking for guidance. I do not have a good answer. I tell her I'm sorry, that I should not have let my own struggles affect my work. But even as I say it, I know it's not entirely true. Because what I told Tyler was not wrong. I do not have the answers. And pretending I do has not helped anyone. She hangs up, still angry, and I sit with the weight of it. The knowledge that I've failed. That I've let people down. That the persona I built, the competent, stable, reliable psychologist, has cracked and there's no putting it back together. That evening, I take one of the old notebooks and sit on the back porch. The sun is setting, the sky streaked with orange and pink, and I open to a blank page. I do not know what I'm going to write. I do not know if I have anything left to say, but I start anyway. I write about the crack, about the feeling I had after Marcus's session, the moment I realized I'd been giving advice I did not believe. I write about Sophie's question, about who I was before I became who I am now. I write about the woman at the park, about loss and choice and what you can live without. And I write about sitting here, on this porch, not knowing what comes next but knowing I see and not go back. When I finish, it's dark outside. The notebook is still open in front of me, the pages filled with messy handwriting, half-formed thoughts, sentences that do not quite land. It's not good, but it's real. And that's something. Karen comes outside and sits beside me. She does not ask what I'm doing, just looks out at the yard, the shadows stretching across the grass. "I've been thinking," she says, "about what you said, about going through the motions." Yeah, I think I've been doing it too. Not in the same way, but I've been coasting. just getting through the days. And I do not know when that started. I do not say anything. There's nothing to say. I do not know if we can fix this, she continues. But I think maybe we can try to stop pretending. Stop acting like everything is fine when it is not. And then what? I do not know. Maybe that is okay. We sit there in the quiet, and for the first time in a long time it does not feel like silence. Feels like space. Space to breathe, to think, to not have to be anything other than what we are in this moment. The next morning I get an email from Principal Hayes. She wants to schedule a meeting to talk about my return to work. I stare at the email for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. And then I close my laptop without answering. I do not know if I'm going back. I do not know if I can sit in that office again, listening to students talk about their fears and their dreams, and pretend I know how to guide them. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll find a way to do the work without the pretense, to be honest about the uncertainty instead of hiding behind expertise. Or maybe I will not. Maybe this is the end of that chapter, and I need to figure out what comes next. That afternoon I go for a drive. No destination, just moving. I pass the school, the coffee shop where I met Sophie, the bar where I talked to Brian. All these places that are part of my life, but feel like they belong to someone else. I end up at the park again. The bench by the pond. The woman is not there, but I sit down anyway, watching the water, the ripples spreading out from where a duck lands on the surface. I think about what she said, about loss, about choice, about what you can live without. And I realize the answer is not simple. I see a not live without Karen. But I also see a not keep living the way we have been. I see a not live without my work. But I also see a not keep pretending I have answers I do not have. I see a not live without the person I used to be. But I also see a not go back to him. So what's left? I do not know. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the answer is not about figuring out what I can live without. Maybe it's about learning to live with not knowing. I sit there for a long time, long enough that the sun starts to sink toward the horizon, long enough that the park empties out and it's just me and the water and the fading light. And when I finally stand up and walk back to my car, I do not feel fixed. I do not feel whole. But I feel something I have not felt in a long time. I feel present. When I get home, Karen is in the kitchen, and I walk up behind her and put my arms around her. She stiffens for a moment, surprised, and then she leans back into me. I do not have answers, I say. I do not know what we're redoing or where this goes, but I want to try, not to fix it, just to be here, to stop pretending. She turns around, and there are tears in her eyes. Okay. We stand there holding each other, and it's not a resolution. It's not a happy ending. But it's something. A beginning, maybe, or just a moment of honesty in a life that's been built on too many lies. That night I open the notebook again, and I write. Not a story, not anything polished or complete. Just words, thoughts, the messy, uncertain truth of what it feels like to not know who you are, but to keep trying anyway. I do not know if I'll ever show it to anyone. I do not know if it matters. But I write it anyway because it's the only thing I know how to do that feels real. And when I close the notebook and turn off the light, I lie in bed next to Karen, and I do not have answers. I do not have a plan. I do not have certainty. But I have this moment. And maybe for now that's enough.